Welcome to Belief Busters Podcast, where we change the world one belief at a time. True transformation happens when we question if the beliefs we hold are of truth, or simply someone else's belief that we have internalized as our own. I'm your host, Rev Cherie Taylor-Jones, and I'm glad you could join us on the journey. Today we have Dmitria Burby who's joining us, and she is really super excited because she's launching her first book up this fall, and this is a memoir of her healing journey as she moved from corporate executive to rediscovering and connecting with her soul and spirit and allowing her to unlock the life that she always dreamed of. Dmitria says the core of this healing journey is to let go of the belief that was handed down to her that life had to be hard, that we have to work ourselves to the bone in order to find success. She has discovered that success does not equate to happiness, that there is a whole other way to approach life. Dmitria feels her calling is helping women reconnect with their soul and spirit. Welcome, Dmitria.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to have this type of juicy conversation of another path, another way to evolve our consciousness. So if you're willing, let's start at, well, who told you life was hard? How did you come to believe that you had to work hard to get everything that you have?
I grew up in a working class American family. My mom was an immigrant from Korea, and my dad, grew up middle class. And just that upbringing, I think of my mother being an immigrant. And I think when you come to this country, you come with this idea of the American dream and working hard to be able to change your station in life. And for me, that was just ingrained in me as a young child. My parents owned their own company, and so it was always all hands on deck from a very young age to help the success of that. And we worked hard and knew that there was a direct relationship from our hard work and actually helping produce things for this business into, food on the table. And that was just ingrained from a very young age.
I'm smiling because I completely relate to this story. My family immigrated from the UK. And so I got here when I was about 7, 8, somewhere in there. Same exact, it's like, get out of my head, Demetria, because that's the same understanding that I had. You come
Yeah.
here, you're able to, the streets are paved with gold, and it's your
Yeah.
hard work that will make it better. And
Hmm.
that's what you have to do. Keep your nose to the grindstone and just push, push, push.
Yeah.
So that
And it's
sounds just hard.
reinforced. Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, it's reinforced in our society, in our culture, that go to school, you get a degree, you work hard, you get a job, you work hard in that job, and you eventually see success from working hard,
Right,
and you're rewarded for that in
right.
American culture. There isn't a lot of areas in mainstream culture where you're really rewarded, at least when I was growing up. I think it's changing now, but where you're rewarded for taking an alternate path in life that doesn't adhere to the mainstream expectations.
Absolutely. I completely understand. I was an entrepreneur as well, and it freaked my mom out. She was just like, how are you going to take care of yourself? You can't do this, because
Mhm.
it was completely different than, going to a company that you're going to work 25, 30 years for and be rewarded and taken care of in your pension, right?
Yeah,
Those days, they don't exist anymore. So then
yeah.
what was your journey to move from this high achiever, success is yours, just work hard enough? How did you move from that
Yeah.
to another way?
I just, I had reached this place in my life where everything that was promised to me, right, by society, by these ingrained beliefs that we all have, that you work hard and you gain success. I had a really amazing job. I had a beautiful family, a nice house, a car. I had everything that should make up this American dream. but I was burnt out. I was exhausted. I wasn't happy. I couldn't find joy in my life. And I thought to myself, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And I thought there was something wrong with me for a
Mm-hmm.
long time. And then I realized there's not something wrong with me per se, but there's something wrong with the way that I'm perceiving how you reach happiness and how you experience joy. I thought that, if I had that job title, the next one, whatever it was, if I
Yes.
had a little bit more money, if I had a bigger house or a nicer car, that I would
Yes.
be happy. And what I realized is that that is not what is going to make you happy. What's going to make you happy is really knowing yourself, knowing what brings you joy, and actually getting to experience those things in life that bring you joy. For me, it was I knew I have three children. I knew I wanted to spend more time with them. I wanted to be more connected to my husband. Those I knew were at the core of what brought me joy.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this other stuff I was doing was just taking away time from that. So
Yes.
I had a real reckoning with how can I think that the things that are ultimately going to bring me happiness and joy are actually taking away the time from the things I know bring me joy. And I had to reconcile that. And I just quit my job one day and was like, I'm going to be full time in this to rebuild the relationships with my kids and my husband and see where that goes. And ironically, where it took me was you have to know yourself first. You have to connect with yourself and have a really deep relationship with yourself before you can have those deep relationships with other people. So it was a bit
Amen.
of a surprise to me in my journey because I'm so used to logic and
Yes.
stepping through the process as we're told it's supposed to happen. So
Yes.
that was a side, came out of left field for me, and I realized that that is really core to individuals' happiness and experiencing joy in your life.
How difficult or scary was it, or maybe it wasn't scary for you to just say, we're done with this corporate life. I'm quitting this job. How did that go over with your
Yeah.
family, with your husband?
My husband is absolutely amazing. He is my biggest cheerleader. Yes, I mean, I can't say enough great things about him because it was his support that allowed me to do it, both financially, but emotionally is more important, right? He was there telling me that it would be okay because it's terrifying when you have built your whole life really relying on that external influence, those
Yes.
accolades, those
Yes.
rewards, not monetary rewards, but on the title, on the praise that you get from your coworkers and the business. And that is feeding your self-worth, your self-identity, your self-love, all of those things. It's terrifying to rip yourself from that paradigm.
Yes.
And without my husband telling me that it would be okay, that I would figure it out, that he would be there to support me, I just don't think I could have done it. The months after I left,
Yes.
was just pure panic of who am I without this?
Yes.
The first week is amazing because you're like, I'm on
I'm
vacation. This is like
free.
the best thing in the world. Week 2, week 4, week 6 is where that panic sets in of, oh, have I made a mistake and do I need to go
Yes.
back? Because you really start to go through the withdrawal symptoms from being addicted to that external input into your self-worth. And that's where the real hard work starts is
Amen.
around that 4 to 6 week mark.
Yes. And so then what did you do? How did you shift from that sense of panic, like, well, who am I now that I'm not this title here?
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
what was that like for you?
Um, that's such a great question. I ironically really at that point leaned into being the best mom I could be. I thought, oh, my kids are in school. They were a little older. They were in high school and junior high. But I was like, oh, I missed out on this being this amazing mom. I'm gonna really lean into this. And the irony of it was that the kids were like, why are you here? We are in high school. like, wait, like the high school well, it was one of my kids' birthdays. I took balloons to the high school. I was like, this is going to be amazing. I'll surprise them with balloons. The lady at the front desk was like, ma'am, you're not allowed to be here. I was like, okay. That was
You
my sign of like, there's some other path here, and it's not
Yes.
just tapping into another area where you can be an external title, right? I was leaning
Right.
into just switching from getting that external praise from a job from my corporation to my kids. And it was actually a really big gift because it forced me to say, okay, your kids don't need you every moment of the day anymore. So what is it that's going to fulfill you? What are you going to do that really makes you happy? And I started to meditate in a really intentional way. I had been meditating for years, but
Hmm.
really this was the point where I thought, okay, I have really nothing else to do other
Okay.
than, working out once a day. So what else can I pack into my day to figure this out? So I started meditating and really thinking about what are the things that I can add into my life that will bring me joy,
Yeah.
um and really connecting with spirit and the sense of who I am. And that started to then snowball into, okay, this is something that I'm really passionate about, knowing myself. And eventually that turned into wanting to help others. And I think of my purpose in life being just to experience the like beauty and wonder that is available to all of us. I think that's my purpose.
Yes.
That's all of our purpose.
Yes, it
But
is.
I have this passion for helping other people discover it. And so I like the combination of that purpose being just to enjoy life and experience joy, and the passion really being to help others do the same thing.
And how long do you think your process was? You don't have to give me like, finite time, but
Yeah.
sometimes our listeners have these unrealistic expectations that,
Mhm.
you make this decision and 3 months later you've, become enlightened.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you and I both know that that is not the case. So can you
Yeah.
just kind of give us a ballpark for moving from that super awareness of the transfer of title from corporate executive to mom?
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's something more now. I'm moving here. And then once you arrive there, how long do you think it took you to kind of actualize?
Well, I think that my personal journey was really compressed. So it took me about a year and a half from the day I quit my job.
Okay.
But in reality, I had been doing the work for probably 7 or 8 years before that. And a lot of that work was getting me to the point where I could then quit my job, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
So,
Yes.
so it can happen before you just up and leave your job. And I think one of the other important things to remind people is that you don't have to quit your job in order to follow this path. So
True.
many people are like, well, it's not realistic for me to quit my job. And I'm like, yes, I happen to be in a situation that it really worked for me.
Right.
But it is completely possible to do the self work that I was doing before I left my job and really get in touch with who you are, especially if you're being intentional about it, about the self care, the self love, and really reconnecting with yourself. Then you
Hmm.
can shift those external factors to be less um, a reliance on them, and really turn them into what they should be, which is a compliment, right? It should be sort of like icing on the cake instead of the whole cake itself.
Beautifully
Um,
said.
yeah,
Yeah, because sometimes we think, oh, once I become spiritual or enlightened or aware, then I'm not part of the world anymore. And that
right.
doesn't have
Right.
to be that way.
No,
I
no.
love that you said that, it's the icing, not the cake.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we are human. We have to figure out how to be spiritually connected to ourselves and to that higher power. And we also need to be human and enjoy everything that we get to experience here. And that often includes things that take money. Like we
Yes.
still need housing, we still need food, we still need some of these things. And I think that it's perfectly acceptable to have both. I mean, that's the
Yes.
ultimate dream, is to be able to be deeply spiritual and connected and enjoy your life to the fullest that you can.
Absolutely. I like to say to people that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, so
Yeah.
it's not to exclude either, but how do we bring them together in a healthy
Hmm.
way for wholeness, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So important.
What steps would you suggest to give people permission to really start this work? And are there any techniques or processes that you would offer to our listeners?
My number one tip for people is to engage in self-care and self-love. And I think that oftentimes we hear about self-care and it's like, take a bath or, do this or do that. And I really, for me, my self-care was taking a nap, right? Because oftentimes we are so exhausted
Yes.
from being burnt out with our job and being disconnected that really it might just be as simple as taking a nap or allowing yourself to just sit and not have anything on your list and be bored. Like if you
Mm-hmm.
can get to a point where you're bored and you at that point can choose anything that you want to do, that is your ground zero of okay, now you've opened up the door to any possibility for yourself. So anything you can do to not have a to-do list for half an hour or an hour, rest, sleep, those are the things that I say start with. And then you can
Yes.
build into eventually taking a bath will feel really good and really regenerative. But if you start with something that somebody else is telling you is self care that you haven't really explored and found on your own, it's going to feel like another task. And that's
Right.
what we want to avoid.
Amen. Yes. We don't need another thing to do.
No, self care should not be on your to do list. It should just
Amen.
be part of your routine,
Yes.
and it should feel really good. And so if it doesn't feel really good, then it's not self care.
Awesome. The same thing can be said about self love. So,
Absolutely.
we hear those two phrases, right? Just thrown about like what does that even mean? Can
Yeah.
you just tease that out a little bit for the self-love piece?
Yeah. I think for me, self love started when I started to give myself some grace. So I wasn't so hard on myself about needing to be perfect or be the perfect mom, right? It kind of
Yes.
like slammed me in the face with that balloon incident where I was like, but I'm going to be this perfect mom that shows up at school with balloons. Um, and so it was like, oh, okay, it's okay that I don't know what's appropriate in this moment. I'm still like struggling and trying to figure out who I am and what I am, and that's okay. And I think that that's where self-love really started for me was with the just grace that I was giving everybody else around me. It's so easy to give other
Yes.
people that grace, but giving yourself that grace to just struggle, figure it out, try things. That's the kernel that was planted for me.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think the other piece that I learned about self-love is it's okay to fail. It's okay to make
Absolutely.
mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I come from that perfection paradigm that it's
Mm-hmm.
like this crisis if you make a mistake.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
really learning that every human being on this planet makes a mistake, and that's part of the growth. That's
Yeah.
part of learning. That's part of awakening. That was
Mm-hmm.
like, whew, the weight just like really fell off my
Mm-hmm.
shoulders. So I
Yeah,
think the two of us
absolutely.
combined is just a great place to start.
Yeah, yeah. And looking for those lessons in those mistakes, right? Not in a, I need to fix that, but there's something here when I make a mistake that is going to give me a sign or a signal that I should be doing something slightly differently or that there's some other path to explore that I hadn't thought of before. So I actually look at all of my mistakes now as really big gifts
They are.
to help me, figure out my path in life.
Yes, I couldn't have said it better. Thank you. So tell me, what do you want people to walk away from this conversation knowing? Like, what is that thing that you want them to
Yeah.
have as we kind of conclude this conversation?
I think the most important thing for people to know is that happiness and joy are accessible to you in your life today. whatever your life looks like, there is a way for you to access that joy and happiness. And it's right here in front of you without changing anything else in your day-to-day life.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Say yes, everyone.
Yes.
Yes. And do you work with clients? I know you said you have a book coming out. Would you tell us a little bit about that and what you do?
Yeah, I have a book coming out in September. It's a memoir of my own personal journey over the last 7 or 8 years of really starting to find myself and then ultimately leaving my job. It talks about that and my journey really into this awakening and self-awareness. I do work with clients one-on-one. You could find me on Instagram at Luminance Healing. I post nearly every day with just inspirational quotes and tips and tricks to reconnect with yourself.
And what's the name of your book?
It is Return to the Light Within. So really
Beautiful.
finding that spark inside of you again.
I don't know about you, but this was like a really easy conversation.
Yes,
It
the time just flew by.
did. I
I
just
love
looked
it.
down. I'm like, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you for saying yes to being with us and being with our listeners. We really appreciate you. I'm sending you blessings for huge success on your
Thank
book when it's
you.
released. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
sure. And for our Belief Buster posse,
Mm,
I
yes.
want you to really just be able to live that life that is yours that you deserve to have, that you can have joy, you can have your heart's desire. The choice is yours. If you are enjoying these conversations about assessing your belief systems and how to transform outdated beliefs, then please subscribe and give us a positive review. To support this podcast and its transformative work, you can also become a sponsor for as little as $5 a month. You can reach Rev Cherie at info@beliefbusterspodcast.org. To continue on this journey of evolution, you can also get my book, Turning Your Why into Why Not, at Amazon or any other bookstores, which gives you practical tools to do this work. See you next time on the flip side.